All right, so my masterpiece is Edward Scissorhands from 1990, directed by Tim Burton, of course, starring Johnny Depp, Winona Ryder, Diane Wiest. So I picked this movie because maybe the time when I watched it, maybe I was in my 20s, I think, that this whole element of the outsider in this sort of a way who's, I mean, he feels like a teenager to me,
Hmm.
even though he's probably older, but that whole time frame of you trying to find yourself, find love, acceptance as you're growing up, and the world around you just feels what it feels. I think that really made an impression on me. And I think that's why it stayed with me. But after rewatching it over and over, the reason why I think it's a masterpiece because for him is because, of course, all the craft departments are amazing in this movie, but there's something so clever about the fact that your lead character actually creates art in
Mm.
front of you. And you also see the creation of your lead character in the lab, Frankenstein's lab that they show. There's like a lot of meta elements to, because Tim himself is always doing that too, right? So there's something very cool about that you get to see so much great art just created. And yes, it's kitschy and funny that your fences and hedges and your dogs and your hairdos are all insane and crazy, but they are clever and quirky, and I love that about. And then the last thing I would say before I throw it to you is that of all his movies, there is a sense of sweetness and melancholy to this movie that really resonates with me, because usually he goes for big laughs or wacky and weird, and there isn't heart in it, maybe in moments, but like this movie is all heart from the very beginning, from the time when Dan Weiss kind of brings him home to him falling in love for Dan Weiss and Alan Arkin, just like taking him as whatever, they don't even, there's like so much heart in this movie, and it's all about that. Like when stuff falls apart, it is because people are hurting and he's
Hmm.
hurting and you're with it. So I don't know, because of that, this movie is my masterpiece of his.
Yeah, so I'm definitely not surprised you put this as your number one Burton film because I mean you used the word already. The I think this is the most melancholic of all of his movies, and I know that is a feeling that you love. So I'm
Yes.
not surprised that's number one. This is a film that I saw when it came out, and I think is easily one of Burton's best movies. It still holds up really well to this day. I think, like you said, every part of this movie, from the production design to Danny Elfman's score and obviously to Johnny Depp. I mean, this is a very early star-making turn for him. I think he just does such an excellent job in this movie, which is essentially almost like a silent film performance in terms of
Mhm.
what he's able to give to Edward. But I think what makes this movie, in a way, like I think his masterpiece in the sense of his most personal is it really is a movie about an artist who
Mhm.
is misunderstood and first sort of gets adoration from the people that don't understand him through his art, which in this case is his hedge trimming and then his hairstyling. And then he starts getting adoration from the town. But at the end of the day, he is too of an outsider, too much of an outsider, too weird, too different to actually fit in. The town turns on him, and then he has to go and do his art elsewhere, back in the tower. But the citizens still get to experience his art through the
From a
snow that gets
distance.
created, right? From a distance. So I think that is sort of this maybe Tim Burton's whole, artistic journey, right? Of he has this weird different vision, but if he gets too close and tries to get too much into, the studio system or whatever, you have too many people controlling him, he can't do that. And he has to go retreat to his tower and make his art there, which, as sort of a stereotypical, maybe like tortured artist image, whatever that I have of him, that I think that maybe is why he relates so much to this Edward Scissorhands character and why this movie does feel so incredibly personal. Every
Yeah.
time I see it, it just feels like the Tim Burton, artistic journey. And to make it so early on in his career too. I mean, I think it's like his fourth film or something. That is just amazing that he's able to put all of this out there that early
Yeah.
in his journey. But that is sort of every time I see this, just think of Edward is Tim Burton. It's a great film.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned Johnny Depp. Like, I'm not a huge Johnny Depp fan. I never was, and so is the case with Winona Ryder as well. But I think there's something about this movie and these characters and the way Tim Burton draws them that they are perfect.
Hmm.
for, and especially him. Like he, like you said, it's a silent movie performance. And it's so critical, right? Like this is so odd and weird. And if he doesn't work, the movie does not work at
Hmm.
all. And it's utter commitment, but just so much joy and wonder, like a child almost. The desire to please people and get their validation and acceptance, also like a child, but
Hmm.
also being so sensitive that you're so fragile, even though you literally have knives as hands that you could break. Like there's
Right.
just so many ironies and like tenderness in that. And Depp is able to tap into that so beautifully. It's just so moving to see that. And I think the silent MVP of the movie to me is Diane Weist,
Hmm.
because you need that other person who sees what the world doesn't see in this person, and she has no questions at all from the very beginning. And that again, you have to buy that, otherwise the whole movie falls apart. Like, oh, why would somebody bring somebody like that home? But you buy that because it's just so unconditional, and it's just like a gut response.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, why don't you come along?
Yeah. Yeah.
No explanation needed. And it's
Right.
just so earnest and so sweet.
Yeah, like adopting a lost dog or something is sort of the,
Exactly.
oh, you immediately, I'm gonna take you in, I'm gonna, show you care and love in my home, even though I don't know who you are, and you clearly, have scissors for hands.
Right.
But those scenes, and also too with Alan Arkin, I love sort of the dad and
Mm-hmm.
sort of how he's so matter of fact and also immediately accepting, but just in a different way, not in like a
Right.
loving made, more traditional like dad way. It's like, oh, okay, let me teach you how to do this. Okay, like you're sort of my de facto son. His
Yeah.
dynamic also is so great with
Yeah.
Edward, and just that whole family is so cool. But I definitely agree that Diane is great too, and I love the sort of juxtaposition that the normal quote unquote suburbia, they're the bad guys, and all the Karens of the neighborhood, all the women are kind of running around and sort of causing problems. Like this movie obviously has a lot of references to like Frankenstein. They're
Right.
definitely like the villagers in the town that don't understand the monster and trying to drive him out. And I love just how he can take the, yeah, again, normal suburbia that in other movies might be like the conformity that you want to have, and this ideal perfect, suburb and perfect neighborhood. But actually, they might look at that from the outside, but actually they're bad guys who don't end up accepting Edward, and for a while maybe using him for a little bit too.
Right.
Like definitely that one, I can't remember her name, but the one character with the red hair, she's sort
Right.
of like almost like sexualizing his
Yeah.
talent, which again, as an artist, maybe that's what sometimes you feel, that someone is sort of attracted just to that part of you, even though not you, just sort of like your art. And she's sort of like then again causing problems for him because she's trying to sexualize him, and then other folks are trying to commercialize him. Oh, you should start a business with your talents, and which isn't really what he's trying to do. He's just trying to express art and give art to the world and not make money from it or do this whole thing. So he's sort of getting pushed in all these different directions that society might push you in as an artist, but that's not what he wants. He just wants to express himself through his scissors. And then he
Yeah.
gets to do that. Unfortunately, he does that at the end, but unfortunately, he can't do that with other people. He has to go off on his own to do that, which again
Yeah.
is sad, but maybe that's the life of an artist. I don't
Yeah,
know.
and in on this watch, I was like, first of all, it's pretty clever in terms of the relationship that we see of him with everybody in the town, and there are
Hmm.
different shades to that. Somebody is sexualizing because it's different, and sometimes that can be, sexualized, or the commercial aspect, or oh, we're gonna show you off to other people because you're weird,
Right, right,
and there's people get a kick out of that or whatever. So you see like different versions of that, which I think is pretty smart. Otherwise, it'll get pretty boring, right? That, oh, everybody's having the same reaction to this person.
right.
But at the same time, like I kept thinking about that, if somebody like this, not an artist, but somebody who literally was like this showed up, it would be pretty odd. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter if you're in suburbia or not. Like it would be pretty odd. And if he has to live in an uncompromising way, meaning not getting rid of his scissors or maybe just keeping two and not 12, you have to go elsewhere.
Right.
It's just how it is. Like, how are you going to, and to give the people credit, like, and I love how they show that people don't pounce on him right away.
No,
Like
right,
it
right.
takes a bit. Like people are mostly okay initially, and they all have their things and what have you, and then it sort of gets out of control. So in a movie like this, it'll be very easy to just say, oh, the suburban people are the bad people and what have you. But the truth is that it's, yes, they're bad, but everybody is bad and good in some way or the other. It's just more of like this just doesn't fit right. It just doesn't work. I think that's what I end up taking away from this.
Yeah, neither could adapt to one another. I mean, I think that
Right,
I like that part of the movie too, where they keep saying, "Oh, we can fix your hands," which
right,
is sort of what makes him him, and that
right.
it's like taking away his talent, by making him conform by having regular hands instead of scissor hands, and
Yeah,
that would ruin him in a way, and
yeah,
maybe he can't fit in, and he has to just live in
exactly.
the tower,
Because
which is
having
sad.
those hands also doesn't work, because
In right,
he's literally destroying things. Like he's
right.
hurting people as
Hmm.
well. So there's that at stake.
Hmm.
So it's not so cut and dry, which is what I like about this movie. It has more on his mind.
No pun intended with cut and dry because
Yeah.
of the scissors, or is that intended? But no, I know I totally agree. I think this movie, even though it's very simple, it's
Yeah.
told, and I love the framing device of the story to the little girl. Like it's framed like a fable and a
Right.
fairy tale. And I think that's great. But there's a lot more beneath the surface of this movie for sure. I think it is his most personal movie in a way. I mean, he's touched
Yeah.
on his, what it's like to be an artist in a lot of his different movies. We're going to talk about Ed Wood in a little bit. That's an artist. He did Big Eyes, another artist. So
Right.
he's done this before, but I think this movie feels the most personal,
Yeah.
which
And the
I
most
think,
successful as well, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, I think so. I like
Yeah.
Ed Wood better, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think it is in terms of, especially as Tim Burton's aesthetic. I think this is the perfect encapsulation of that. So I definitely think this is another one of his masterpieces. So I'm not surprised for you to put this on your top for Tim Burton.
Last thing I have to mention, I mean, we talked about the production design and the aesthetics of it. Like, I love the whole 50s sort of. I mean, it's sort of, where is this place? What time period is it? Like, it's very
Mm.
odd and it's left to you to kind of figure that out. And that's amazing. But then what tops it is in Frankenstein's lab, when you see the whole assembly line of how it's all practical, I think.
Oh yeah, it
It's
is. Yeah.
absolutely amazing. It made me think of silent movies like the Golem or movies of that era. It has that kind of tactile quality to it. Blown away.
It's so cool that, yeah, I love that sequence too. It's like also this sort of childlike imagination, which I think is
Yeah,
also what how Burton's mind sort of feels sort of like, not in a pejorative way childlike. I think
right.
it's just
Wondrous.
yeah, wondrous and creative. I love that sequence too, that Rube Goldberg machine, which
Yeah.
he has in several of his movies, like Pee-wee's Big Adventure opens with one, and then sort of, I guess this is a way to sort of track the kind of decline of his career. There's also a sequence similarly in the Charlie and Chocolate Factory that he made, but it's all CGI, and the wonder just doesn't hit the same. It's
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah, I
it's like with
remember.
the opening sequence of that is the chocolate bar being made, and it just doesn't feel the same as
Yeah,
seeing something that that they actually built. It's just so much cooler. Yeah,
yeah,
but I agree. Like I love that the Vincent Price is great in this movie, and that whole
yeah.
aesthetic,
Great casting.
such a great casting. That aesthetic of the inventor's lab is so cool. Yeah, this movie looks so amazing. You want to be in that set for sure.
Yeah.
Hi there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I review a new release and then discuss 6 other movies made by that film's actor or director and how they shaped us. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.